My name is Cree and I am 24 years old asterisk. I should have seen it coming. But when my younger brother called me that night, I didn't think twice. His voice was heavy, broken even. You know that tone when someone's world has just fallen apart. That was him. He had just broken up with his girlfriend. And not just a casual breakup, it was messy, emotional, and left him with nowhere to go. Asterisk, can I crash at your place for a while? Just until I figure things out, he asked, almost whispering. Asterisk, how could I say no? This was my little brother. I still remembered him as the kid who followed me around everywhere, the one I used to protect from bullies at school. My husband and I had a spare room anyway, and he made it sound like it would only be for a few weeks. Of course, I said without hesitation. Come over, we'll help you get back on your feet. Asterisk, at that moment, it didn't feel like a big deal. It actually felt kind of nice. Having family around again, sharing our space, it sounded comforting. My husband agreed too, saying, it's just temporary. He'll get sorted soon. Asterisk, when he arrived, he looked exactly how you'd expect someone post-breakup to look. Tired eyes, messy clothes, carrying just a duffel bag. He thanked us over and over, saying we were lifesavers. The first week was peaceful. He mostly stayed in his room, came out for meals, and even joined us a couple of times for movie nights. For a while, it almost felt like a bonding experience. We even laughed together, something we hadn't done in years. Asterisk, looking back now, that was the calm before the storm. Because at the time, I truly believed it was just a few weeks. I believed he would save money, plan his next steps, and move out as soon as he was stable. What's family for, right? Asterisk, I didn't realize then that this few weeks would turn into months and that letting him in would open the door to a completely different problem. Asterisk, at first, everything was fine naturally, better than fine. Having my younger brother around again felt oddly comforting, like a small piece of our childhood had moved back into my home. After his emotional call, I expected tension or awkwardness. But he surprised me. He was quiet, polite, and mostly kept to himself. Asterisk, the first few days, he treated the guest room like a safe cave. He'd emerge only occasionally, usually to grab some food or chat for a few minutes. Sometimes, late at night, I'd find him in the kitchen making tea, and we'd end up talking like we hadn't done in years. He opened up about the breakup, the things that went wrong, and how lost he felt. I felt like I was finally being the big sister he needed me to be. Asterisk, there were even moments of fun. We had impromptu movie nights where we dug out old DVDs, laughing at the same silly comedies we loved as kids. One evening, he brought home snacks, and we stayed up way till late eating chips and ice cream, reminiscing about growing up together. For a little while, it didn't feel like a burden, it felt like family. Asterisk, my husband didn't mind either. In fact, he was kind and understanding, often asking my brother to join us for dinner. It was nice seeing them get along. My brother would help clear the table occasionally and even offered to cook once. It wasn't perfect, but in those early days, it seemed manageable. Asterisk, at that point, the arrangement felt temporary, like a short chapter before he moved on to the next stage of his life. I assumed he was quietly planning, saving, and figuring things out. Honestly, I even thought maybe this breakup is exactly what he needed to reset his life. Asterisk, if only I had known that these peaceful days were just the calm before the storm that would test my patience, my marriage, and even my definition of family. Asterisk, but then things started to change, slowly at first, almost unnoticeable. But soon the signs were everywhere. Those few weeks we had agreed on quietly stretched into a month, then 2, and before I knew it, we were creeping up on 3 months with no clear end in sight. Asterisk, it started with small things like the spare room looking more and more like his permanent bedroom. Clothes began piling up in corners, shoes scattered near the door, and his gaming equipment spread across the desk. The once tidy guest room now looked like it had been claimed, and his habits. Completely different from those first peaceful weeks. At first, he was quiet and respectful. But now, it was long gaming marathons, headphones blasting, and late night laughter spilling down the hallway. The smell of fast food wrappers and energy drink cans followed him everywhere. My husband and I started noticing little messes around the house, crumbs on the counter, dirty cups left in the sink, and lights left on all night. It wasn't just the mess, it was the vibe. That temporary "thanks for helping me out" energy started fading. Instead, it felt like he had settled in, like this was just his home now. And the strangest part, he didn't seem to be in any hurry to change his situation. I kept telling myself, he just needs time. He's going through a breakup. He'll figure it out. But deep down, I was starting to worry. He didn't talk about saving money or looking for a better job. The part-time job he had barely covered his own spending habits. And I started noticing where his paychecks were going: online games, takeout, and small luxuries instead of bills or savings. Our spare room wasn't temporary anymore. It was starting to feel like a permanent arrangement. And that's when the little voice in my head whispered the question I didn't want to face. What if he's not planning to leave at all? By the end of the second month, the truth was impossible to ignore. My brother wasn't just taking a little time to recover, he was coasting. I began noticing a very clear pattern, and none of it was good. He had a part-time job, which should have been enough to cover some basics. But instead of saving or even offering to help, he blew through every paycheck, and it wasn't on things that made sense. It wasn't on gas, job applications, or even clothes for interviews. It was video games, fast food, gadgets, and late-night food deliveries. Every time I heard the doorbell and saw another takeout bag, I felt my patience shrink just a little more. And while we were paying for everything: rent, utilities, Wi-Fi, groceries, he hadn't contributed a single cent, not for food, not for electricity, not even for simple household items like soap or toilet paper. I'd open the pantry and find snacks disappearing twice as fast, the milk half gone after one night, and yet the grocery bill was still fully ours. It wasn't just the money, it was the attitude. He seemed comfortable. I started realizing he didn't see this as a temporary favor anymore. The dishes piled up after his gaming sessions, crumbs scattered across the counter, and he'd leave energy drink cans on the coffee table like it was his own apartment. I tried hinting at it. Hey, could you help with groceries this week? Or think you could chip in for Wi-Fi? Every time, he'd laugh it off with the same line. Family doesn't charge family. Don't worry, I'll figure it out soon. But soon never came. And with each paycheck he spent on junk food and gaming gear, my frustration grew. I started wondering if he's not saving, if he's not contributing, what's his plan? Or worse, does he even have one? I tried to be patient. I really did. When my brother moved in, I told myself it was temporary, a few months. Maybe just until he got back on his feet. I was glad to help. That's what family does, right? We support each other when times get tough. At first, I didn't want to come off as pushy or make him feel unwelcome. So I dropped little hints here and there, casual things, said in passing, hoping he'd pick up on them. Hey, could you help with the groceries this week? I'd ask with a light tone, almost like a joke. Or, think you could pitch in for Wi-Fi this month, with a smile, just in case he wasn't sure what was expected. But every time, he'd brush off like it was absurd. I even brought it up. Family doesn't charge family, he'd say, chuckling, as if that was the final word. Like there was some unspoken rule that because we shared blood, our responsibilities, especially financial ones, magically disappeared. At first, I let it slide. I figured maybe he just needed a little time. Maybe he was embarrassed and would come around eventually. I told myself he'd offer to contribute once he got a job or felt more settled. I even defended him when my husband started raising his eyebrows. But weeks passed, then months, and nothing changed. He kept eating the food, using the electricity, binge watching shows late into the night on the streaming accounts we paid for. Still, every time I hinted gently, carefully, he'd laugh it off again. "Come on, it's not like I'm a stranger," he'd say. I started to feel this knot forming in my stomach every time I walked past his room, like I was being taken for granted, but couldn't say it out loud without sounding cruel. I kept wondering, was I overthinking this? Or was he just really that comfortable living rent-free under the excuse of family? Meanwhile, my husband was getting frustrated, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. Every day, it was something. He'd come home from a long shift, walk into the kitchen, and be greeted by a sink full of dishes that weren't ours, dirty plates stacked high, half-eaten food crusted onto bowls, empty soda cans tossed on the counter like we had a maid, the trash bin always overflowing. It became a pattern. My brother would make a mess and just leave it. He'd spend hours locked into his gaming chair, headset on, yelling at strangers through the screen, while our Wi-Fi bill kept climbing. The lights in his room stayed on all night. His laundry spilled into the hallway, and somehow he always managed to miss trash day. My husband tried to stay cool at first, he really did. But it was obvious he was nearing his limit. Once, after a particularly rough day at work, he pulled me aside. "Is this seriously how it's going to be?" he asked, rubbing the back of his neck like he was trying to calm himself down. "We're paying every bill, doing all the cleaning, and he's just here, no job, no rent, not even basic chores." He had a point. And it was getting harder to keep defending my brother when I didn't fully believe the excuses. Myself, the imbalance was starting to wear on both of us, not just financially, but emotionally too. I was stuck between trying to keep the peace in our home and not wanting to alienate my own brother. But every time I asked for something small, help with the dishes, take the trash out, maybe contribute $20 to a bill, it was brushed off like I was the one being unreasonable. What made it worse was how easy it all seemed for my brother. He was completely unbothered, like being a guest in someone else's home came with zero responsibility, just comfort, convenience, and the assumption that family meant never being held accountable. Eventually, the tension boiled over. My husband had been biting his tongue for weeks, maybe even months, trying to stay respectful because he knew how much my brother meant to me. But one evening, after stepping over a pile of empty snack wrappers in the living room and seeing the sink overflowing yet again, he snapped calmly, but firmly. He walked up to my brother, who was, of course, planted in his gaming chair, headset on, surrounded by energy drinks and half-eaten takeout containers. My husband waited until he paused his game, then asked, "Hey, could you at least clean up after yourself? Like, the kitchen's a mess again." Man, no yelling, no accusations, just a reasonable, direct request. But my brother didn't take it that way. He leaned back, shrugged, and said, "Chill, man, it's not that serious. Like the piles of trash and the unpaid bills weren't a big deal. Like basic adult responsibility was optional." I was in the kitchen when it happened, pretending not to listen. But every word landed like a brick. That casual dismissal, that tone so indifferent, so entitled, as if we were the ones overreacting, as if expecting him to clean up after himself was some kind of unreasonable demand. My husband just looked at him for a second, probably debating whether to push further or let it go. In the end, he walked away, jaw tight. Later that night, he told me, "I can't keep doing this. I'm trying, but I feel like he doesn't respect us or this house." And I couldn't argue with him. That moment, that one sentence, "It's not that serious," kept echoing in my mind, because to us, it was serious. It was about respect, about effort, about not treating our home like a free ride with no expectations. But to my brother, it seemed like none of it mattered. That was the night I started to see things more clearly, and for the first time, I questioned if letting him stay had been a mistake. That's when it really hit me I was being taken advantage of. And the worst part, he didn't even seem to care. There was no guilt, no shame, no quiet attempts to do better when we weren't looking. He was completely at ease, like living off of us, contributing nothing, was perfectly normal. It wasn't just the messes or the unpaid bills anymore. It was the silence, the absence of any sign that he even noticed what we were doing for him. He never said thank you, never asked if we were okay carrying the weight of everything while he coasted by. He had slipped so comfortably into the role of a dependent that it started to feel deliberate. There was no plan, no job applications, no talk of moving out, just video games, long naps, and a growing sense of entitlement every time I tried to revisit the topic groceries, chores, money. He'd hit me with the same line, "Come on, we're family," as if that phrase was a shield, a justification for everything he didn't do. I started to resent how easily he used that word to excuse his behavior. Family, a word that's supposed to mean love, support, mutual respect, but in his mouth it became a weapon, something he could use to guilt me into silence while he took full advantage of our generosity. And still, a part of me wrestled with guilt. He was my brother. We had grown up together. I remembered sneaking snacks at midnight, covering for each other when we were kids. I didn't want to be the one to push him out. But at what point does helping turn into enabling? I looked around our home, the home we worked so hard to build, and realized how uncomfortable we had become. In it, my safe space now felt like a burden, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Love didn't mean letting someone walk all over you. Family didn't mean sacrificing your peace just to keep someone else comfortable. That was the moment I knew something had to change. Finally, I had enough. It had been almost 3 months of excuses, dirty dishes, late-night gaming marathons, and not a single offer to help, not with money, not with chores, not even with basic decency. I kept telling myself to wait it out, that maybe he just needed time. But time had passed, a lot of it, and nothing had changed. I was exhausted, not just physically from cleaning up after him or working to cover all the bills, but mentally, emotionally. I felt like a guest in my own home. Every time I tiptoed around the issue, hoping he'd magically read between the lines, I only ended up more resentful. And I knew if I didn't say something now, I'd end up exploding, and that wouldn't help anyone. So I did what I had been rehearsing in my head for weeks. I set him down. I took a deep breath. I reminded myself to stay calm. No yelling, no passive aggression. Just the truth. Look, I love you, I began, but you can't keep living here for free. Starting next month, I need you to contribute $200 a month. That's for rent and utilities. Honestly, it's way cheaper than anywhere else. I said it gently, but directly. I even softened the amount, just $200, when he was eating, sleeping, and living in our home full time. I knew he didn't have a job, but I also knew he hadn't really been looking. He could have picked up part-time work by now if he wanted to. This wasn't about bad luck anymore. It was about effort or the lack of it. I expected a little pushback, maybe a sigh, an eye roll, a groan followed by fine. But instead, what I got was something I didn't see coming. Not just resistance, not just defensiveness. What came next felt like betrayal. Before I could even respond, he shot up from the couch like I'd slapped him. His face was flushed, full of shock and rage, like I'd just committed some kind of betrayal. He didn't say another word to me. No discussion, no reflection, just fury. Then he stormed out of the room, the sound of his footsteps loud and deliberate as he disappeared down the hallway. Moments later, I heard his voice behind his closed door, loud, exaggerated, practically dripping with wounded pride. He was on the phone, and I didn't even have to guess who he was calling. Our mom. I stood there in the living room, frozen, listening to his side of the conversation echo faintly through the walls. He was spinning the narrative faster than I could believe. "She's kicking me out," he said. "She doesn't even care what I'm going through. She's charging me rent. Mom, who does that to family?" He made it sound like I was tossing him onto the street with no warning, like I hadn't fed him, housed him, and kept quiet for nearly 3 months. Not a word about the gaming, the mess, the unpaid bills, just this carefully curated version of events that painted him as the victim and me as some cold-hearted villain. I didn't bother interrupting. What would be the point? He wasn't interested in honesty. He was looking for backup, for sympathy, for someone to take his side. And sure enough, maybe 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. I didn't even need to look at the screen. I already knew. The heavy feeling landed in my gut like a stone. It was Mom. And I knew exactly what she was about to say, even before I picked up. Because in this family, the one who speaks up is always the problem. The one who sets a boundary is always the bad guy. Mom's voice cut through the phone like a knife sharp, heavy with disappointment, every word carrying the weight of judgment. "You should be ashamed. He's your brother. Family helps family." That one sentence flipped the entire narrative. Suddenly, I wasn't the sister who had carried him for months, covering his bills, giving him a roof over his head, being patient with his excuses. I wasn't the one who had already sacrificed my own peace to keep him afloat. No, none of that mattered anymore. Instead, I had become the villain in my own family's story, the selfish sister, the one who turned her back. It was astonishing how quickly the months of effort disappeared. Erased by a single decision to say no, the guilt settled in fast, thick and suffocating. Mom's words replayed in my head like a broken record, drilling into my chest. I wanted to scream. "Do you even know what I've been through? Do you know how much I've already done?" But I stayed silent, swallowing back the frustration, because that's what happens in families like mine. The one who says enough is always painted as the problem. And the cruelest part, no one asked how I was doing. Not once. No one wondered about my rent, my stress, or the way his constant presence had drained the life out of me. They didn't care that I was exhausted, or that I'd been holding everything together on my own. It was never about me. It was about keeping the image of family loyalty intact. So I was left carrying not only my own struggles, but now the crushing weight of guilt on top of it. A guilt that didn't belong to me, but one I was forced to wear like a badge of shame. And deep down, I realized something. In this family, love was measured by how much you sacrificed, not by how much you'd already given. Since then, the atmosphere at home has been suffocating, like walking into a room where the air itself is heavy with resentment. My brother has turned passive aggression into an art form, dragging his feet round the house as if every step is meant to announce his displeasure. He doesn't need to shout or confront me directly. Instead, he makes sure his disapproval lingers in the smallest actions, the loud sighs, the muttered comments under his breath, the slamming of a cupboard door just a little too hard. One evening, his resentment finally takes shape in words. "Guess I should just live in my car," he sneers, not even looking at me. "At least cars don't charge rent." The words hang in the air like poison. I freeze, unsure if he expects a response. But deep down, I know the remark isn't really a conversation starter. It's a weapon. His sarcasm cuts deep, not because it's clever, but because it's cruel. It twists the truth, making me out to be heartless, the kind of person who would rather see her brother sleeping in a parking lot than under a safe roof. And that's what makes it so unbearable. In his eyes, I'm no longer the sister who gave him months of shelter, food, and patience. I'm no longer the one who extended grace while he figured things out. No, now I'm the villain, the selfish one. All because I dared to draw a line and say, enough. What stings the most is how intentional it feels. It's as though he's punishing me simply for having boundaries, turning my attempt to protect my own household into an act of betrayal. His bitterness lingers in the walls, in the silence at dinner, in the way he avoids eye contact, but makes sure I hear every jab, and each time, I'm left with the same thought echoing in my mind. Why does caring for myself make me the bad guy? Why is protecting my peace treated like an offense? The tension is constant now, a reminder that love in this house has been replaced with blame. Meanwhile, my husband's patience is wearing thinner with each passing day. What started as quiet frustration has turned into a silent storm I can feel. Every time we sit down to go over our budget, he doesn't need to raise his voice or spell it out for me. I see it in the way his shoulders tense when another bill arrives, in the way his jaw tightens whenever my brother makes yet another careless remark, and in the exhaustion that creeps into his eyes when we talk about our future. He's tired of watching our hard-earned money evaporate into someone else's comfort while we cut corners just to save a little for ourselves. We're the ones skipping takeout nights, delaying home projects, and saying maybe next year to vacations, all while my brother sprawls on our couch acting as if responsibility is optional. My husband has worked long hours, sacrificed, and dreamed alongside me for the life we're trying to build together. And now, instead of moving forward, it feels like we're stuck, dragged down by someone who refuses to even try. To his credit, he hasn't unleashed all of his frustration on me, though I know he has every right to. He doesn't complain constantly, but the frustration is in the little things, the sharp edge to his sighs, the way his responses turn curt when my brother is in the room, the nights he stares at the ceiling instead of falling asleep easily beside me. He doesn't have to say the words out loud for me to hear them. This isn't fair, and he's right. We agreed to help for a season, to give my brother breathing room while he found his footing. We never agreed to be permanent sponsors of his laziness. My husband's breaking point isn't just about money, it's about respect, about fairness, about our marriage being forced to carry a weight that was never meant to be ours. And though I hate to admit it, I can feel myself reaching my own breaking point right alongside him. I feel pulled apart, as if my heart and mind are at war with each other. On one hand, I want to be the kind of sister who shows up when times are hard, the sister who offers a hand at home, a sense of stability when the world feels uncertain. That part of me whispers, he's your brother. If you don't help him, who will? It tugs at my conscience, reminding me of childhood memories, of loyalty, of the unspoken duty that family is supposed to carry for one another. But then, there's the other side, the side that can't ignore reality. And the reality is staring me in the face every single day. He isn't even trying. There are no serious job applications being filled out. No effort to budget the money he does have. No plans or steps forward. It's like he's waiting for life to magically fix itself while he lounges under our roof, eating meals we pay for, watching TV on the couch we bought, and sleeping soundly while we lie awake worrying about bills. The reality screams at me. This isn't helping him, it's enabling him. And yet, when I finally ask for the bare minimum, a contribution to rent, groceries, or even just accountability, I'm suddenly the villain in the story. The word he throws at me, greedy, twists inside me like a knife. How did it come to this? How did providing shelter and support for months turn into being labeled selfish the moment I stop giving? Endlessly, it's a cruel paradox. If I keep giving, I'm drained and resentful. If I stop, I'm heartless and greedy. There is no version where I win. No version where I am seen for what I've actually done. And that's the true dilemma, choosing between protecting myself and preserving a family bond that feels increasingly one-sided. Every path feels wrong, and no matter which direction I lean, I end up carrying the guilt. And then there's Mom. If the tension at home wasn't enough, every phone call with her feels like stepping into a courtroom where I'm already guilty. No defense allowed. I answer the phone hoping for comfort, maybe even a little understanding. But instead I'm met with her voice, sharp, steady, and dripping with disapproval. Each conversation turns into a sermon I never asked for. Her words are always the same, like a script she's rehearsed. Money comes and goes, but family is forever. She repeats it like it's the ultimate truth, as if saying it often enough will erase the reality of my situation. To her, it's simple: I should give and keep giving, because that's what family does. End of story. But as I listen, a question forms in my mind, one I never dare to ask her out loud. Does family really mean handing over your stability so someone else can live without effort? Because that's what it feels like she's demanding. Not love, not support and balance, but sacrifice. And always at my expense. I can't help wondering why the responsibility always falls on me. Why isn't she questioning my brother's lack of effort? Why isn't she lecturing him about pride, work ethic, or gratitude? Instead, her focus is squarely on me, on how I've supposedly failed as a sister for daring to expect the bare minimum. The more she talks, the heavier the guilt becomes, pressing down on me until I'm second-guessing everything. Maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I should just let him stay, rent-free, job-free, responsibility-free. But then another voice in me whispers back, if this is love, why does it feel like a trap? Because real love, real family, should build each other up, not chain one person down so another can float through life without consequences. And if my mother can't see that, then maybe what she calls family and love at all its obligation dressed up as loyalty. And I'm tired of being the one paying the price. Here's where I'm at now, stuck in this strange space between love and resentment. I do love my brother, he's family, and that bond runs deep. When he first came to me asking for help, I didn't hesitate. I opened my home, rearranged my budget, and told myself that this was just what family does. And in the beginning, I even felt good about it. There's a certain kind of pride in being the person someone can rely on, and knowing that when the world feels cold, your door is the one place they can knock and be welcomed inside. But as weeks turned into months, the feeling shifted. What started as a temporary lifeline has begun to feel like a trap. Help, at least in my mind, is supposed to be a bridge, something you cross on your way to independence. Not a place where you pitch a tent and decide to stay. Instead of moving forward, my brother seems to have set up camp right in the middle of that bridge. Content to live in limbo while I carry the weight of responsibility he refuses to pick up. And that's where the sting lies. Love shouldn't feel like exploitation. But lately that's exactly what it feels like. The more I give, the less it's appreciated. The more I sacrifice, the more it's taken for granted. I can't help but wonder, if the roles were reversed, would he do the same for me? Would he shoulder my expenses, cook my meals, and quietly endure the strain on his own marriage for my sake? Or would he, like me, eventually want to see some effort in return? Because if family truly cares, it can't just mean endless taking. Real love, real loyalty, should include respect for the home you've been welcomed into, for the effort it takes to keep the home running, and for the person who has opened their door. And the bare minimum of that respect is contribution, in whatever way you can manage. Without that, love starts to look less like family and more like use. When I take a step back and look at the situation logically, I know I haven't asked for anything unreasonable. $200 isn't much now when you consider the actual cost of living. Rent alone is hundreds more than that, not to mention utilities, groceries, internet, and the endless little expenses that come with running a household. Asking him to contribute to $100 wasn't some greedy cash grab, it was a token amount, barely scratching the surface of what we spend each month to keep the lights on and food in the fridge. If anything, I was being generous, offering him a chance to ease into responsibility without overwhelming him with the true numbers. But logic doesn't seem to matter here. The moment I brought it up, the narrative shifted, and somehow I became the villain. In the family group chat, I'm no longer the sister who opened her home, covered every bill, and kept things running while he drifted. None of that matters now. I've been recast in a new role, the bad guy. Meanwhile, my brother has slipped seamlessly into the role of the poor, helpless victim spinning a story where I'm cold and heartless, and he's the one suffering under my supposed cruelty. It's maddening how quickly people forget reality, how easily they erase the months of sacrifice, the late nights when I lay awake worrying about how long this could go on, the arguments with my husband when we had to shift money away from our own goals to cover someone else's needs. None of that gets mentioned. None of that seems to count. Instead, my brother's selective retelling paints him as a struggling underdog, while I'm cast as the greedy sister demanding money he doesn't have. And in a family that loves drama, perception becomes more important than truth. The most painful part, watching people I love buy into it, it makes me question not just my choices, but my place in my own family. And so here I am, staring at a choice that feels impossible, like being asked to cut myself in half. On one side, there's the option to stand firm, to insist on rent, to remind my brother that being an adult means contributing, and maybe even to draw the hardest line of all, telling him it's time to move out. The thought of doing that makes my stomach twist with guilt, because I know the family would see it as cruel, as abandoning him in his time of need. I can already hear the whispers. How could she do that to her own brother? But then there's the other option, the one I've chosen too many times before. I could cave once again, because family helps family. I could swallow my frustration, keep footing the bill, and let him continue coasting under my roof. But every time I imagine doing that, I feel the weight pressing heavier on my chest. Because the truth is, it's not just about money, it's about my peace, my marriage, my own future being drained dry while he floats along without consequence. The cruel irony is that no matter what I choose, I lose. If I hold my ground, I'm painted as heartless. If I cave, I betray myself and my husband, sacrificing our stability for a brother who isn't even trying. It feels like I've been shoved into a no-win scenario, where the only role I'm allowed to play is the villain. And yet, deep down, I know something has to give. I can't keep living in this constant tension, carrying both the financial strain and the emotional weight of everyone else's judgment. At some point, I have to decide, do I protect my brother's comfort, or do I protect my own life? Neither choice feels fair, but pretending I can keep doing both is tearing me apart. At the end of the day, after all the arguments, the guilt trips, and the whispered comments behind my back, I keep circling back to the same question. Am I really the bad guy? It's the thought that keeps me awake at night. Staring at the ceiling while my husband sleeps beside me, I replay every decision I've made, every sacrifice, every moment when I chose to help instead of turning away. And yet, none of that seems to matter anymore. The label has already been slapped on me: selfish, greedy, heartless. But I can't help wondering, if I'm so selfish, then why have I carried him for this long? Why have I paid the bills, cooked the meals, and kept the peace when he refused to? Why am I the one lying awake with knots in my stomach while he sleeps soundly under a roof I provide? These are the questions that gnaw at me, but they don't silence the doubt, because the truth is, it's easy to be cast as the villain when you're the one finally drawing boundaries. People don't see the silent sacrifices. They only see the moment you say no. They don't notice the months of generosity. They only notice the day you stop giving. And that's the part that hurts the most, being judged not for the whole story, but for one chapter taken out of context. So I find myself asking, what would anyone else do in my place? Would they keep helping, clinging to hope that he'll eventually pull himself together? Or would they draw the line, even knowing it means carrying the weight of being misunderstood? Right now, I can't tell if standing up for myself makes me strong or if it makes me the villain in this family story. Maybe it's both. Maybe strength and selfishness look the same to people who benefit from your silence. And that's the question I can't escape, no matter how many times I try to quiet it. Am I really the bad guy, or just the first one brave enough to say enough?